Fraudsters also look out for vacant parcels, vacant pieces of land. They don't work alone, they're a racket. They will investigate, find out who the registered owner is, where he stays. These people get all this information, forge your documents, and deal in the properties. So to the absentee landlords, please wake up. Wake up, the bride is going. Like I said, land is not a vegetable. Land is a precious asset that must be guarded jealously. I am a legal practitioner, a land consultant, the chief executive partner of Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, a commercial practice with 3 branches. The main branch at Kampala, we have a branch in Mityana and a branch in Mbarara. The firm itself has a unique skill set ranging from attorneys, surveyors, engineers, and valuers. It is a one-stop solutions center, tailored to make a legal difference, tailored to bring expedited solutions to our clients. We have the necessary diversity to meet their needs. You cannot talk about Kalikumutima Deo without talking about Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. As a person, I specialize in land matters. This includes and is not limited to land processes, litigation arising from land matters, and legal advisory touching land matters. Land fraud is a series of acts designed or tailored to cheat and thereby dispossess one of their property. There must be an intention and there must be property that one is deprived of. We have several indicators of a fraudulent land transaction. I'll begin with some of the most common areas like estates. We have grants that are forged. You have a big estate purportedly represented by a grant from a small estate. For example, in Kampala, an estate can be worth 1 billion, but it is represented as worth 50 million. Fraud manifests itself in estates where fraudulent administrators deal with estate property without the consent of the co-administrators. We also have fraudulent administrators dealing in the properties of the beneficiaries. Once an estate has an administrator, under the law, the administrator is supposed to distribute the estate, render an account to court, not to treat it as a going concern. We also have scenarios where powers of attorney are used to cheat or to defraud. A power of attorney is an instruction given by the donor, and many a times these instructions are specific. We have scenarios where donees are given mandate only to manage, but they use the same powers of attorney to deal in the property, that is, transfer the same. We have matrimonial property being dealt with without the consent of one of the partners or spouse. Under the laws of this country, for you to deal in matrimonial property, you must have the consent of your spouse. For you to deal in a property that you acquired jointly with your spouse, you must have their consent. These are some of the incidents of fraud. We also have special certificates of title. If you lose your original certificate of title, you can apply to the Office of Titles to replace the same. But this is an area that has been grossly abused. Registered proprietors under the law are allowed to apply for special certificates of title. Persons with knowledge touching the loss of the title can declare. We have a statutory declaration giving an account of the circumstances leading to the loss. Now, many a times, people, including the registered proprietors themselves, including administrators, including moneylenders, apply for special certificates of title. They forge the signature of the registered proprietor, make a statutory declaration, and special certificates of title are issued. Fortunately, today, Ministry of Lands has come up with some reforms For you to be issued with a special certificate of title, the registered proprietor must appear for identification. We believe this will now mitigate the fraud, but this was an area that was grossly abused to the detriment of the unsuspecting Ugandan. We also have fraud manifesting in official estates. I'll give you the example of Uganda Kingdom, which we are honored to represent. Under the law, to be precise, Section 131 of the Registration of Titles Act, for you to deal in an official estate, you must have the express consent of the authority. In Buganda Kingdom, it is the Kabaka of Uganda who acts through his lawful attorneys. It is unfortunate that we have had scenarios where fraudsters forge these consents, deal in Kabaka's land to the detriment of the kingdom. Fortunately, the kingdom has mechanisms in place to handle such scenarios. We also have fraud manifesting itself in protected areas. Recently, we were part of a mass hearing organized by Ministry of Lands that we hope will lead to the cancellation of titles in wetlands. Unless you're a frog or a snake, you have no reason to be in a wetland. You should not have a title there. Unfortunately, again, titles have been created in these gazetted areas, and they should not be. And they have been created illegally, they have been created fraudulently. I know at some point I'll touch the tenant or component of illegality under which fraud falls. Another indicator of land fraud that I must quickly talk about, this is fraud that is committed on the register, that manifests itself in the form of double plotting and double titling. Under the laws of Uganda, a parcel cannot have more than one title, especially where there are competing interests. You can have a lease out of Milo, but you cannot have a lease and a lease on the same parcel. You cannot have freehold and freehold on the same parcel. You cannot have Milo and Milo on the same parcel. Today it happens, unfortunately emanating from the district land boards, unfortunately emanating from Uganda Land Commission. These give multiple grants. Of course, under the law, to be precise, Section 48 of the Registration of Titles Act, Cap 230. Instruments rank in priority of registration. Of course, additionally, that comes down to argument in the courts of law. I'll not delve into that at this stage. But this is very unfortunate. It does happen. We have the land information system that was introduced in 2012. This has mitigated fraud on the register. However, it does not walk backwards unless you deal in your property and submit your title. They may not easily be able to detect. The land information system has a phase 2, and currently I believe they are doing data clearing. They will be able to check all these gaps, but this is another form of land fraud. We also have double plotting. A parcel or a plot cannot and should not have more than one plot number. But today you find one parcel, plot number 10. The same parcel has plot 100. And of course, naturally, that results into two titles. You also have the same parcel or plot with two different road names. The same plot is touching Port Bell Road, and on the other side, Katazemiti Road. This is abused to deceive that this is a completely different piece from what is in the system as earlier indicated. I hope I don't get shot for this. I know that is just a joke. The major perpetrators of land fraud, in my experience, are the registered proprietors, the lawyers, the surveyors, the registry staff, and government officials. I must quickly qualify my statement. It is not all, but some of them. Some of them who have compounded this problem and led to undesirable losses. We have registered proprietors today who own two titles. They apply to the Ministry of Lands or the Titles Office, indicating that their original certificate of title is lost or damaged, whereas not. They in turn sell the property, deal in both titles, to the detriment of the unsuspecting members of the public. We have fraudulent lawyers, or those who hold out as lawyers, who are also part of this fraud. Actually, some of them are organized into rackets or gangs of sorts. In Ghana, there's a database for sexual offenders. I pray that one day in Uganda, we also have a database for fraudsters, land fraudsters, and they are known. They are known. At times in the corridors of the titles office, you'll hear, oh, this is the same person. We also have land surveyors who are part of the fraud schemes. These carry out desk surveys without even going to the ground. During the Commission of Inquiry into Land Matters, the famous Justice Catherine Bamugemerere Commission, a land surveyor was interrogated live on national and international TV. And he purported to have put markstones in Lake Wamala. Picture that. How do you put markstones in a lake? Well, interestingly, a number of our lakes are surveyed. Partly Lake Victoria is surveyed, hence leading to the exercise that I alluded to earlier. We also have fraudulent valuers that are part of the fraud. These understate the values of properties. That is fraud. We also have some, and I must emphasize some, not all, some members of staff of Ministry of Lands and the respective zonal offices are part of this racket. Not all the titles originate from Nasa Road, the famous Nasa Road. No. We have original titles coming from Ministry of Lands that are acquired fraudulently. The police, which is a government department, unfortunately is also part of fraud. Put in place to investigate the fraud, but some police officers are actually part of the fraud. Fraudsters take advantage of police. Through police, they get certified copies of your ownership documents, of the record at Ministry of Lands, and forge your title. This information is not manufactured from heaven. It has a source. It's just that the rackets work together. How to avoid fraud? I have overemphasized the issue of possession, and I'll not stop. I have a special message for absentee landlords. Land is a special asset. Guard it jealously. I always use the analogy of a bride. If you have your beautiful bride, guard them lest the eagles, the vultures, will scoop them away. Do not brandish your land titles and forget to take possession. A few months ago, in the news, the Minister of State for Lands, my senior colleague, addressed the same issue. I'll hint at the same and insist, advise you, please take possession. As I speak, there is an issue just near us in Bulindo, where 4,000 residents are almost losing their land. 4,000 residents, many of whom have titles, including churches, including schools. Now, some of these residents, though with titles, never occupied their land. I'll not comment so much about that issue. It is not, I'm not bound by the sub judice rule because we are not in court, but I'll not comment about it further because it is an interesting one. However, it is an example that I will use today. You must take possession. Fraudsters going forward and not connected to Bulindo. Fraudsters also look out for vacant parcels, vacant pieces of land. They don't work alone, they're a racket. They will investigate, find out who the registered owner is, where he stays. If you're out of the country and I surely appreciate the plight of our clients in the diaspora who buy pieces of land here, unfortunately did not develop them in time. These people get all this information, forge your documents, and deal in your properties. So to the absentee landlords, please wake up. Wake up. The bride is going. And for some of you, already gone. Like I said, land is not a vegetable. Land is a precious asset that must be guarded jealously. How can an illiterate, or to be precise, one who doesn't know how to read and write, avoid being a victim of land fraud? Engage a professional. Engage professionals. Engage lawyers. Engage surveyors. However, even when you engage professionals, please, please, please make sure they interpret every term of that contract for you, every term of that agreement for you. Make sure you understand the transaction. Make sure you understand the agreement. And at the bottom, it should have a certificate of attestation that X knowledgeable in English has explained the contents to you and you have understood them. And this X is an advocate. An advocate, I repeat, is competent to handle your transaction for the so many reasons that I have mentioned. Many people, many fraudsters, many land fraudsters take advantage of illiterates. This is very unfortunate, so I encourage them to engage professionals. However, on the flip side, we have illiterates taking advantage. I must quickly qualify my statement, semi-illiterates, who take advantage of the fact that they are semi-illiterate. They actually understand the transactions they have entered, then turn around in order to invalidate the transactions. They turn around and challenge these transactions under the pretext of not understanding the contracts that they entered. This is very unfortunate. So I encourage professional colleagues and people in commerce trading, with the consent of the party you're trading with, to record the transaction. Record it. Video with their consent, so that they do not turn around and say, I was not part of that transaction. I did not understand the transaction. I'm an illiterate. Yet they actually understood the transaction. After confirming that there is indeed land fraud, these are the remedies available to the victim. 1, administrative interventions. You lodge a caveat on your land. You write to the Commissioner Land Registration requesting them to block the file. We now have the Land Information System that actually started in 2012. Transactions are done electronically, so the Commissioner Land Registration can block this file. 2, you proceed to court through a good lawyer, of course qualified, file a suit. Once a suit has been filed, any good lawyer knows that they have to protect the land pending the determination of the suit. They will file an application for an injunction. They will file an interim application to protect the status quo. But I must quickly address the issue of status quo because it is often abused. I have overemphasized possession because it relates to status quo. Many times the fraudsters alter the possession, or if you're not on the ground, they occupy. Now, once your good lawyer applies to court and gets an order preserving the status quo, what status quo are they preserving? Status quo simply means the current state of affairs. That's why I always insist, do whatever is possible to protect your land. Maintain possession. Where it is altered, fight back and get this possession. That way, when you get the orders preserving the status quo, it will be clear what status quo you are preserving. Of course, any good lawyer will define the status quo that they seek to protect before court. These suits are not determined in one day. That is why we need these interim remedies. Lastly is filing a complaint at police. You commence criminal proceedings. For issues that arise in Kampala and countrywide, interestingly, we always advise that you open up your complaint at the CID directorate, where the director sits, because his office is accountable. His office is accountable. We must be alive to the realities. Our systems have challenges, but not all are non-functional. The office of the director CID is fully functional and can help you if faced with such a challenge. They are accountable. What does court do if it finds out that someone was fraudulent? Court is guided by the pleadings that you put before it, the prayers that you make, the evidence that you adduce. Once you have adduced the necessary evidence and your prayers were clear, if X acquired the title fraudulently, court will make orders as to cancellation of the title, directing cancellation of the title, directing that a permanent injunction issues, restraining the fraudster from dealing in the land. If you suffered any damages and these were properly pleaded, then court will award you damages. The damages can be for mean profits. If this was a rental property, for instance, and you've lost rental income, the damages can be general damages or even special damages. If the entry alone was fraudulent, not the title per se, then court can direct the Commissioner Land Registration or the Titles Office to cancel the illegal or fraudulent entry. What does court do if it finds out that someone was fraudulent? Court is guided by the pleadings that you put before it, the prayers that you make, the evidence that you adduce. Once you have adduced the necessary evidence and your prayers were clear, if X acquired the title fraudulently, court will make orders as to cancellation of the title, directing cancellation of the title, directing that a permanent injunction issues, restraining the fraudster from dealing in the land. If you suffered any damages and these were properly pleaded, then court will award you damages. The damages can be for mean profits. If this was a rental property, for instance, and you've lost rental income, the damages can be general damages or even special damages. If the entry alone was fraudulent, not the title per se, then court can direct the Commissioner Land Registration or the Titles Office to cancel the illegal or fraudulent entry. I'll run back to the formula. You must carry out the necessary due diligence. You must engage professionals. You must take possession, both legal possession and the actual possession. Transfer the title into your name, safeguard it, occupy your land. It may not be physically, but at least fence it off, put a gate, have some sort of activity on your land. Periodically carry out searches, and you must be compliant. If it is a lease, make sure you pay your ground rent, your property rates. Make sure you comply with the covenants of the lease. And to the absentee landlords who pride in your riches yet do not safeguard them, reality check. It is time to wake up. Develop your properties. We have financial institutions that are ready to help, especially the banks. Stanbic Bank, Centenary Bank, Equity Bank Housing Finance Bank, Bank of Africa, name it. These are ready to offer you the necessary financing to develop your properties other than abandon them. NSSF has tailored projects now to help people develop their properties in a bid to save. We must be alive to the realities of the day. The globe is evolving, and so are the global challenges. I must emphasize that caveats are an interim remedy, an interim measure. Do not treat them as a permanent solution. A caveat can be removed, a caveat can be lapsed. Save for caveats by beneficiaries and caveats by registered proprietors that are designed to be watertight. A caveat is not a permanent solution. So even where you lodge a caveat, if there is fraud, please proceed to court, file a suit. Get a permanent solution to land fraud. I'll quickly talk about identity. We cannot discuss land fraud without talking about identity, because these land fraudsters impersonate. We thank God that today we have national identity cards. You must verify the NIN in your due diligence. A NIN has 14 characters. If you stumble upon one with 15 or 16, that is a red flag. Fortunately, with the electronic systems that Ministry of Lands operates, there is validation of stamp duty, validation of NINs. The systems are interlinked. But we also encourage you in your due diligence to look out for identity concerns. Double check the identities. And if you have any doubt, abort. Do not proceed with the transaction. It's always a pleasure as a humanitarian, as a Rotarian, as a lawyer. Service is my core. Serving to make a difference in humanity.
Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, translating visions into reality. For more information, visit our website www.kalikumutima.com.